Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday here at Hyde Cottage. And for those of you who might be new to the channel, that is my code word for Sundays, when there's no mail, when I get no free books plopping through the slot in the front door. And today's bleaker and barrener than usual because it's snowing and sleeting in the middle of April in Boston. It's freezing cold. It's been dark all day. So it just feels like the kind of day that you don't want to engage with at all. And usually, as is my way on bleak and barren Sundays, I console myself by doing a tag. And I was reminded just yesterday by Curtis at Curtis Books and Films that he tagged me recently in the pirate ship tag, which was created by Plots and Points. And in turn, that reminded me that I am actually behind on tags, which is terrible. I love doing tags. I don't know how that happened, but I'm looking back and I'm seeing that I've been tagged on quite a few things that I have not done. So this will be a tag-heavy week coming up, I think, which is fine by me. But in the meantime, I thought I would do this tag. The gist of the idea of it is that you are outfitting a pirate ship with literary characters. And I thought that was a fun enough idea, although I want to start with a small proviso. And of course, it did not occur to Plots and Points, and I don't know that it'll occur to many people on BookTube. I'm not sure how many people on BookTube have ever spent any time on the open ocean. I don't mean, you know, in a small pleasure craft hopping from shore to shore. I don't mean hopping from island to island or anything like that. I mean on a vessel in which you are contributing to its seaworthiness and in which you are days or even weeks away from land for long stretches of time. I don't know how many booktubers have ever done that. Off the top of my head, I can think of only one who might have done that. So I'm largely going to be speaking to an empty auditorium when I say there's nothing playful about pirates. Okay, they still exist in the world today. They are as rampant a scourge as they ever have been. They're like a bacterial invasion. They never go away. They just mutate, and they're awful. There's nothing cool or adventurous or bad boyish about them at all. If you could extirpate them like a disease, you would. And there's nothing worse when you're on the open ocean than spotting a vessel in the distance and suspecting that it may be a pirate ship. There's no feeling worse than that. So this innocent fun tag, which is innocent and fun, actually is built on the back of something that you would pray would never happen to you. And the pirates themselves are scum. They're not. There are no Jack Sparrows in the bunch. having gotten dispensed now with the Debbie Downer note, I thought to get straight to the questions. And question number one is name your ship. Pick a book title that you want as the name of your fearsome vessel. I have no idea. Every possibility that I came up with from my shelves seemed more ridiculous than the last one. So I finally settled on the collected stories of Frank O'Connor. Question number two, pick your flag. Choose a creature or a monster that you would put on your flag. And for me, I would think that you would want, since your flag is visible, although bear in mind this is also a fiction of pirate mythology. In fact, the flag they use is a flag they think you will consider harmless, or that is your own flag, until they get close enough to strike. They don't actually have it. There's no such thing as a pirate flag with a skull and crossbones or anything like that. There's nothing honest or straightforward about them. They just want to sneak close enough to you to get under your guard and rob you and then kill you. But I figure in the mythological, the stereotypical folkloric sense, you want a pirate flag that at first looks endearing to sort of lower your guard, but is in fact upon closer inspection horrifying. And for that, I think the answer is obvious: a basset hound. Question number three, the first mate. Choose a character you want as your second in command. This was fun to think about, because if you think about it for a minute, you realize how many second in commands fill literature. It's not necessarily even a secondary character, because some secondary characters are fairly untrustworthy and some secondary characters are fairly commanding. But a character who is by nature a consigliere, a fixer, a second in command, a quintessential second in command. A whole bunch of them came to mind. I'm going to settle on John Gorman from Edwin O'Connor's great novel, The Last Hurrah, which is about a flamboyant master politician in his 70s named Frank Skeffington, who wants to run one last time for mayor of his city and needs a crew of skilled politicians to get his machinery in motion and get the whole process started. And John Gorman is a classic sepulchral, skeletal, somber, unemotional, old world ward politician who's the indispensable man that you need for such an operation. So I would choose him, although I'm not sure how he'd translate to a pirate ship. Question number 4, a navigator. Choose a character to help you guide your ship across the ocean. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Tolkien fan. Of course, I thought immediately of Caradan the Shipwright, who is in The Lord of the Rings. We never meet him except at the very end. He doesn't play an active part in the story of The Lord of the Rings, which is kind of crazy. That is another. I mentioned a year ago when I did my Lord of the Rings read-through that there are some obvious writerly flaws in the thing, and one of them is that Caradan the Shipwright is off at the Havens and does not take part. He's not present at the Council of Elrond. He does not help with the ring, even though one of the Elven 3 rings, one of the most powerful 3 rings in all of Middle-earth, was originally given to him. So he is a ring bearer. It's crazy that he's not a major character, but if you hear some of his stories in The Lord of the Rings and in the appendix to The Lord of the Rings, and especially in the Silmarillion, you realize that he's the quintessential elvish master mariner, and that despite the fact that in The Lord of the Rings itself, in the world of The Lord of the Rings itself that we see from the very limited vantage point that Tolkien gives us, elves are pretty closely associated with the woods. If you read his grand mythological epic, the Silmarillion, you realize that they're mostly associated with the ocean. And Caradan is all through that, so I would want him. He would certainly not lead us astray. Question number 5: the raiding crew. Choose 2 characters to board enemy ships and do your fighting for you. Again, I should stress, they're not enemy ships. You're the enemy. You're the enemy. You're a reaver, a raper, an infection, a parasite, an invasive organism. The only reason you need a boarding party is because you're going to try and take by force what isn't yours. But getting back to the spirit of the thing, I was thinking of all the great bruisers in literature that I've read. Of course, one of them is a pirate, Conan the Barbarian. But, then I was thinking, well, bruisers are a dime a dozen. Anybody can wield an axe or a sword, and anybody can be taken down by an axe or a sword. What about a master fighter? And the first people that came to mind don't even use axes or swords. They don't use weapons at all. The Bloodguard from Stephen R. Donaldson's fantasy epic, the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever, the first 3 volumes, the first trilogy of Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever, the Bloodguard, have taken an oath to serve the lords of the land, and they are unsleeping, they are untiring, they are not super strong or super fast, but they are trained in unarmed combat to use their whole bodies as weapons, and since they don't age, some of them have an enormous amount of experience. I love that. I think they're one of the only truly original concepts in Donaldson's books, and boy, do they work. So I even 2 Bloodguard would probably be enough to clear the decks of even armed resistance. So I'll go with them. Question number 6, the Doctor. A pirate's life is full of danger. Choose a character to be your ship's doctor. And I don't know why, but I immediately thought of Star Trek in this. Maybe because the doctors in Star Trek are all ship's doctors. They're not part of a hospital. They're part of a vessel that can see action. So I was going through the list of doctors from Star Trek in Star Trek Enterprise. There's Dr. Phlox, who is a gentle, caring, soft-spoken soul, who uses herbs and various alternative medicine techniques, as well as a state-of-the-art for his day medical laboratory on board the Enterprise. And he seemed far too lily-livered and civilized for my taste. And if that's true of him, it's certainly true of Beverly Crusher from Captain Picard's Enterprise, who is a bureaucrat. You can easily picture her telling some doctor on her staff that they were fired. But you can't really picture her roughing it on a pirate ship, I don't think. I'm sure there's probably fan fiction devoted to that, but I can't picture it. And then On Star Trek Deep Space Nine, you have Julian Bashir, who is the station's doctor. And on first blush, you might think, well, surely he'd be a good candidate, because as was revealed later on in the show, he's not just a brilliant doctor, he's also genetically engineered. He's been genetically tampered with to be physically superior to the normal run of human. But boy, oh boy, does it not show. It does not show. He's a Ponce. He would be useless on a pirate ship, at least as a doctor. There might be other uses that would come up, but not on a family channel. And then there's Star Trek Voyager. And on Star Trek Voyager, not only is the doctor, who has no name, he's just the doctor, not only is he largely dependent on the state-of-the-art laboratory and medical facilities on board the USS Voyager, but he's part of those facilities. He's actually a hologram. And later on in the show, he gains a futuristic device that allows him to be solid light, so that he a mobile emitter, so that he isn't necessarily dependent on the machines of sickbay to emit him as a hologram. But it disrupts, and it's easily dislodgeable. It's not an ideal solution at all in any way. So he'd be the least qualified. But when you're going through the list, one name stands out. I know I'm a little bit prejudiced in this regard, but still, Bones McCoy, the chief medical officer of the USS Enterprise. 1701, no bloody A, B, C, or D. And it's not just that Bones McCoy is a really good doctor, and that he has read everything and knows everything, but also we see him in all sorts of barbaric conditions, making intuitive guesses that turn out to be right, understanding how to rough it as a doctor, bringing a massive amount of 23rd century technology and knowledge to the most primitive of conditions and never failing. So Bones McCoy would be my ideal choice for a ship's doctor. Question number 7 is the lookout. Pick a character you trust to watch for danger and spot your foes on the horizon. Once again, I point out, they're only your foes because you're preying on them. They're not coming after you. You're coming after them. And every civilization in the history of the world, every seagoing civilization in the history of the world, has been willing to devote huge amounts of resources and money to fighting pirates, to wiping them out, most famous being Pompey the Great, who was given exactly that commission by the Roman Senate and did a wonderful job, a merciless, wonderful job. It was during that campaign, which unfortunately I don't think has any modern historical retelling. It was during that campaign that the pirates of the Mediterranean realized what would happen if they went up against not helpless merchantmen, but a brilliant tactician with the full backing of the Roman state. And they only had a very little while to realize it before there weren't any anymore for a whole generation. But anyway, sticking with the theme of the question, Cam at Wolfshop Publishing did this tag, and he picked Legolas from Lord of the Rings as the ship's lookout, based on the fact that we're told over and over again in Lord of the Rings that elves have great eyesight, that they can see detail at an enormous distance. And we actually, in the Two Towers, we get examples of that, where Aragorn and Gimli see a smudge on the horizon, and Legolas can actually pick out details on the legwork and the armor of the people who are at that distance. So at the very least, he has 120 vision. So I would want him as my lookout. Question number 8, the entertainment. Pick a character to entertain your mates on the long, cold sea nights. Typically in pirate movies and pirate novels, the entertainment takes the form of song. And that immediately made me think of one of the earliest and most celebrated and yet piratical voyages, which is Jason and the Argonauts. And Jason's crew is composed of superheroes, of beings with superpowers. There are lots of people to man the oars, but there are a lot of people who have superpowers. Jason himself does not, but almost all the other marquee names in his crew do. And one of them is Orpheus, who is such a talented, an unearthly talented musician with his lyre, that he can cause supernatural effects from it. He can cause people to swoon into a stupor. He can cause physical objects in nature to to have reactions to his music. He can affect the gods. He can affect animals. So I obviously it would be Orpheus. And then question number 9 is poop deck swabber. Choose a character you want to force to scrub the poop deck, which is one of the first clear indications to me that Plots and Points has probably never been at sea. But one way or another, you don't want one person doing the cleaning. If you pick one person to do the cleaning, you have created the nucleus of a mutiny. Cleaning is communal. It's the only way it works, especially with long voyages where resentment's going to be a problem anyway. So I wouldn't pick a particular character. If you pick a character from fiction that you despise, I presume, and so you want to do the poop deck, you are essentially assigning a slave to your ship. I don't know of anybody that would fit that category. And question number 10 is tag your booktube mates and challenge them to launch their own pirate adventure. But I'm so far behind on tags that I don't actually know who's done this and who hasn't. I know that Curtis has, and I know that Cam has, but I'd be worried about tagging someone and, you know, they've already done it, and I would thereby reveal that I haven't seen their video, and that would feel terrible. So I'm not going to tag anybody. If you haven't done this and you want to, it is kind of fun to think about these things. And it did divert me a bit on this midwinter day in mid-April. I'm gonna wrap it up for now and get to the other tags. There's about 4 or 5 tags that I'm tagged in. That's just disgraceful. And there may be more. So I will look around. I will jot them all down, and I will get to them one by one. And in the meantime, I will see you later. Thank you, BookTube.